Hi, today I'm going to be predicting the record of every SEC team. I won't be going game by game because that would take forever, but I will preview and give my thoughts on each team. I'll only cover regular season games and the SEC championship. I will not be delving into playoffs or bowl games or anything like that. But before I start, if you love college football, you'll love my channel. I post rants, discussions, and highlights all pertaining to college football. Please consider liking, subscribing, and commenting. Check the timestamps in the description below. We are going alphabetically, so we start with my team, the Alabama Crimson Tide, which I'll probably have the most to say about. Last year, Alabama had a disappointing season, by Bama standards. They of course lost to Tennessee and LSU, both on the road by only a few points. But some could argue they also had other close games like versus Texas and versus Texas A&M. Alabama almost has no one returning. They lost Heisman winner Bryce Young, two-time Defensive Player of the Year Will Anderson, offensive weapon Jahmyr Gibbs, and All-American Brian Branch. However, they do keep Kool-Aid McKinstry, Dallas Turner, and J.C. Latham though. Lucky for Bama, they probably have the most talented roster in the country. I think Jalen Milroe will start at quarterback for the Tide and be much improved with better accuracy and better awareness to go along with his game-changing scramble ability. Saban has brought in Tommy Rees as the new offensive coordinator. I think it's a good hire. Alabama will return to a more run-heavy scheme under Rees, and I think under this scheme, Jace McClellan will have a monster season. The Tide also have a new defensive coordinator in Kevin Steele, who's been with the Tide before. It's not the greatest hire, but he's very experienced and will bring a discipline to this Alabama defense that has been missing in the past few years. I think despite the losses, Alabama will have a bounce-back season. You know, as long as Nick Saban is around, the Tide are never out. I think they go 12-0 this season. Yep, 12-0. I genuinely believe it. The over-under is currently 10.5 wins, so give me the over. Next is Arkansas. Last season, Arkansas did not meet expectations as they went only 6-6. Arkansas lost a lot, but they do keep KJ Jefferson and all-SEC running back Raheem Sanders. Relative to the SEC, they don't have a lot of talent, but they did have a great transfer class. I really like the hire of Dan Enos as offensive coordinator. He's been around a lot, including Alabama as a QB coach a few years ago and Miami this past season. I think he will do very good things with Jefferson and Sanders. I also love the hire of Marcus Woodson, the DB coach from Florida State. Arkansas desperately needed a change on defense as they were dead last in the FBS in pass defense last year. Woodson is the man who will do it. FSU had one of the best pass defenses in all of football last year. All in all, I love Arkansas's hires and some of the players they have. But I heavily bought into Arkansas's hype last year and they really disappointed, so I'm very skeptical. I think they go 7-5. Their over-under is 7.5, so I'm going to go just under. Then I have the Auburn Tigers. They were abysmal last year as they went 5-7 and fired coach Brian Harsin. They ended up hiring Hugh Freeze to replace him, the man that brought Ole Miss so much success a few years back and beat Alabama back-to-back years. They don't pop off the page in terms of talent, but they made up for it by having one of the best transfer classes in the SEC, gaining Dylan Wade and Avery Jones. Also in that class, they got Peyton Thorne from Michigan State as their new starting QB. Not great, but not bad at all. They don't have many stars on the team, and they have an entirely new coaching staff. I think Auburn will improve, but it's going to take some time. I have them going 6-6 in Freeze's first season. Their over-under is 6.5, so I will just lean to the under. The next team is Florida. Last season, Florida had a disappointing 6-6 year in Billy Napier's first season. They lost so much in the offseason, including Osiris Torrance, Gervin Dexter, and Anthony Richardson. Good thing for the Gators, they have a very talented roster, and they kept Jason Marshall Jr. I don't know. I'm not confident in Billy Napier, and I'm especially not confident in Graham Mertz to win some key games for the Gators. I have Florida finishing 6-6 again. Their over-under is 5.5 wins, so I'll slightly take the over. The defending back-to-back national champion Georgia Bulldogs are next. I mean, what is there to say about Georgia that hasn't already been said? They have been dominant under Kirby Smart. They did lose a lot to the NFL, but I'm not that worried. Like Alabama, they just reload talent. But losing Stetson Bennett, Kenny McIntosh, Broderick Jones, Keely Ringo, Jalen Carter, and Nolan Smith will have ramifications though, and you can't look past that. Along with losing those players, they lost offensive play caller Todd Monken to the NFL. This is a huge blow as he played a major role in Georgia's recent success. They are very talented though, having talent on par to Alabama with Christopher Smith and Brock Bowers returning to the team. While Stetson Bennett left big shoes to fill, I think Carson Beck will be very good in his place. I have a lot of confidence in Carson Beck. I think Georgia will dominate once again. I truly don't think there is anyone on their schedule who can overcome them. And I think they go 12-0 for a third straight season. As much as it pains me to say, I think they will go over their 11.5 over-under. Now I'll talk about Kentucky. Last year they had a mediocre 7-5 season. In the offseason, they didn't lose too much production, but they did lose quarterback Will Levis. Lucky for them, they got Devin Leary in the transfer portal, who I think is very, very talented. I also like the hire of Liam Cohen as offensive coordinator. Cohen was the LA Rams offensive coordinator last year and was with the Wildcats in 2021 when they went 10-3. Despite Kentucky having a hard schedule, Devin Leary and Liam Cohen get me really excited about this team. I think Mark Stoops' Wildcats go 8-4. Their over-under is 6.5, so I'll gladly take that over. The LSU Tigers are the next team I'll talk about. In Brian Kelly's first season, they had a very impressive year, going 9-3, winning the SEC West, and beating Alabama. Statistically, they have a lot of production returning, including Jaden Daniels and Harold Perkins. To go along with their extremely talented team, they have arguably the best transfer class in the SEC, getting Denver Harris and Zy Alexander. A lot of people have LSU as SEC contenders and even playoff contenders in Kelly's second season, and I totally understand the hype. I think LSU will go 11-1 with their only loss coming to my Alabama Crimson Tide and Bryant Denny. Their over-under is 9.5, so I will slam that over. Next is Mississippi State. Last year, Miss State went 8-4. This upcoming season will be Zach Arnett's first year with the team as head coach. He's been very solid as the Bulldogs' defensive coordinator these past few seasons. I also think Kevin Barbay is a very solid hire at offensive coordinator. But man, losing Mike Leach is going to hurt this Mississippi State team a lot, even from a team perspective. Rest in peace to the Pirate. Mississippi State doesn't have a lot of returning production, but they do get Will Rogers, who will start for a fourth straight year. Ultimately, while I don't think Mississippi State will be bad, they don't have enough talent to make up for their rough schedule and lack of experience at head coach. I think Mississippi State goes 5-7, under their projected win total of 6.5. Let's talk about Missouri now. The Tigers went 6-6 last year. I'm not too high on Missouri, so I'll get to the positives before the negatives. The Tigers have a lot of production returning. I also think Kirby Moore was a really good hire. He was at Fresno State last year and developed a great passing attack. Missouri will throw the ball a lot, and the good thing is that Luther Burden will get a lot of targets. But the bad thing is that the ball will be put in Brady Cook's hands a lot, and I don't really think that's a good thing. I'm also not particularly high on Eli Drinkwitz as a coach. So, while I like Luther Burden and Kirby Moore, I just think Missouri has too many flaws, whether those flaws be the QB, the coach, or the total amount of talent on the roster. I think Missouri will go 5-7. The over-under is 6.5, so give me the under. The Rebels of Ole Miss are next. They went 8-4 last year. They have a great amount of production returning as they get Jackson Dart and freshman star Quinshon Judkins to return. The roster isn't super great, but the Rebels had a pretty great transfer class. I think the hire of Pete Golding, though, as defensive coordinator is not all that great. I really love Lane Kiffin and what they have coming back. I think the Rebels will go 9-3. The over-under is 7.5, so I will choose that over. Next is South Carolina. Last season, South Carolina had a very impressive 8-4 record, upsetting Tennessee and Clemson. They don't have a lot coming back, but they do keep the Spencer Rattler to Antoine Wells connection. They had a great season last year, earning them a lot of hype, and I really like Shane Beamer and Beamer Ball, but I just don't think they will replicate it this year. I think, like some other teams, they simply have too hard of a schedule that includes the likes of Clemson, Georgia, and Tennessee at Neyland Stadium. I think the Gamecocks will go 5-7, failing to meet their over-under of 6.5 wins. Now we focus on the Tennessee Volunteers. Last year, Tennessee went 10-2 and had one of their best seasons in nearly 20 years. The highlight of their season, of course, was finally beating Alabama in a 52-49 thriller. Now, the question is, can they repeat it? I don't know. Tennessee did lose a lot on offense, including Hendon Hooker, Jalen Hyatt, Cedric Tillman, and Darnell Wright. I don't think they'll quite match what they did last season, but they'll come close. Josh Heupel is a very good coach and offensive mind. Even though Joe Milton didn't do much at Michigan, I can see him being pretty good with the Volunteers under Heupel's system. I predict Tennessee will just match the 9.5 over-under and finish 10-2. Texas A&M is next. The Aggies were arguably the most disappointing team in the nation last year, finishing 5-7 and being probably the worst team in the SEC. They had very bad moments, losing to App State and going on a 6-game losing streak in the middle of the season. They did finish the season strong, though, upsetting LSU. They hired Bobby Petrino as offensive coordinator in the offseason to try and rejuvenate their offense. I think A&M will do much better this season. Jimbo Fisher, while not nearly being the best coach in the SEC, is still pretty decent and very experienced. The Aggies have the most production returning in the SEC. You also got to take into account that from a pure talent perspective, they have an insanely good roster, including wide receiver Evan Stewart, who I think will have a breakout season. Those high-ranked recruiting classes are going to make an impact eventually. I have the Aggies finishing above the projected 7.5 wins and going 8-4. Last and just about least, we have Vanderbilt. The perennial laughingstock of the SEC had a relatively decent season last year, going 5-7 and not being dead last in the conference. I really like Clark Lee as a coach, and I don't think AJ Swan is the worst option at quarterback. But for as much as I like Lee, they simply have a tough schedule and not a lot of talent to match up. I say they go 3-9 and fail to meet the 3.5 over-under. So now that I've talked about every SEC team, let's summarize and record the standings. In the West, 7 is Mississippi State going 5-7. Auburn is 6 going 6-6. 5 is Arkansas at 7-5. Texas A&M is 4 going 8-4. 3 is Ole Miss with a 9-3 record. The second spot goes to LSU at 11-1. And the SEC West champions are Alabama, going 12-0. Now, in the East, I have Vanderbilt last at 3-9. The sixth place to South Carolina with a 5-7 record. Number 5 is Missouri, going 5-7. Florida is at 4 with a 6-6 record. The 3 spot goes to Kentucky at 8-4, and Tennessee at 2 going 10-2. And the SEC East champ for the 3rd year in a row will be the Georgia Bulldogs. So after all that, we reached the SEC Championship, another matchup between Alabama and Georgia, the 2 best rosters in college football and the 2 best coaches. The last time these teams played was the 2021 to 2022 National Championship, where Georgia just edged out Alabama in the 4th quarter to win. But remember, Nick Saban is the greatest coach of all time and is 4-1 against Kirby Smart. I think it's a back and forth game, but the Tide come out on top, getting revenge for last time. But honestly, Georgia will probably still sneak into the playoffs in this scenario anyways. Of course, take this with a grain of salt because I am a Bama fan, but I genuinely believe this will happen. So there, Alabama are my SEC champions. What do you think? What teams am I too low on? Which teams am I too high on? Who's your SEC champion? Let me know in the comments below, but as always, please subscribe for more college football content, including more predictions. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.